conflict? Anybody going to
Work. The Bible studies at night.
Well, to leave at work.
It is at night. But you have work on the 11th?
I'm not Wednesday yet.
Maybe it's not the 11th.
It is.
Oh. So we do that.
You are,
Is that right?
because I didn't put my oar in the water fast enough.
You didn't say thank you fast enough.
I didn't.
I was at work and I was stepping down the stairs on one of our slides, and I thought I had a good step, and I caught just my heel on the edge, and so it dropped down another 6-8 inches, and I ended up twisting an ankle,
Oh,
slashed
man.
my leg, I just hit and I rolled, no big damage, just a twisted ankle, but I'm laying there, so I'm laying there on my back, on the concrete, I look over this way, and there's 3 preload supervisors running my way. There's one over here running my way, and then the clerk officer is right there, Amber, she's running towards me. They're like, are you okay, are you all right? Amber, did you hit your head? No, I twisted an ankle, I rolled, I'm fine, I'm good. Are you sure you're okay? And then my manager comes out of his office, because one of those guys went and told him that one of his drivers had fallen off the slide. So I get up, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm good. Are you sure? You look bad. I go, I twisted an ankle and I collapsed. I just rolled, I'm fine, I'm really good. It's been, I haven't fallen so long, it's been probably almost 3 hours since I followed that. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, buddy, yeah, you're okay now.
Sense of humor's intact.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, Amber's still like, you look like you hit your head. I said, no, I'm fine.
I'm just always this way.
If I had a head
It's not a head injury.
would anybody really notice?
Okay, we are online, by the way.
Oh, fine.
So now everybody knows that you were hurt at work. The whole internet.
That was it.
Well, thankfully.
Yes.
But they see this old guy falling and everybody's running.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Karen, I said, it's not like there's some 70-year-old guy falling off the slide. She goes,
Yep.
67.
You know. Yeah, I think if there's that magnet thing, because I think the doors, I don't know. I know the reams might be in late, so don't close it all the way. There you go. All right, cool. Well, we are online. Let me open up in prayer. Lord, thank you for your people, for your word. And we just pray as we finish up this book this morning that you would confirm and reinforce the things we've learned from it. And be with us now in Jesus' name. Amen. So the last 2 chapters of Ecclesiastes are kind of short, so it's a good way to end, I guess.
There's a comedian who talks about Ecclesiastes,
Yeah.
that he got saved from reading Ecclesiastes.
Really? Huh.
Is that-
Oh yeah. No, that's Jeff.
Yeah,
That guy. Yeah.
Funny guy, he
Yeah.
talks about it, all is nothing,
Yep.
you know.
So, by the way, so now we're back. This is Old Testament. Next, we need to do something in the New Testament. So you have between now and the end of class to think of what you want me to teach in the New Testament. There you go. Otherwise, I'm going to choose. And then it's going to be, the book of 3 John, and we'll go verse by verse. I'm kidding. All right. We could do 2 Corinthians. I don't know. Okay. Remember, this is Solomon's kind of end of life treatise on the meaning of life. And so, as we go through these last couple chapters here, you see Solomon pulls out all of the euphemisms for this, that, and the other thing, and figures of speech and whatnot. And it begins to sound a whole lot like Proverbs and Song of Solomon, which makes sense since it's the same author. But, all right, start off. Chapter 11, he says, "Cast your bread on the surface of the waters, for you will find it after many days. Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. If the clouds are full, they pour out rain upon the earth. Whether a tree falls toward the south or toward the north, wherever the tree falls, there it lies. Well, that's all very obvious, isn't it? No, it's not obvious. These are, again, so that he starts off in verse 1 with cast your bread on the surface of the waters. This is a euphemism for generosity. All of these verses are about generosity. Take my word for it. I know it doesn't sound like it when you read through it, but he's saying, as you're looking for meaning in your life, you might consider generosity, philanthropy, as a way to discover meaning. And honestly, that seems to scratch that itch for a lot of people in the world. Philanthropy is more than just a way to defer your tax obligations. Some people truly want to make their, really wealthy people want to make their mark in the world by giving. And, it feels good when you can do that, and you can see how you can help people, and it makes them happy. And so when they're happy, it makes you happy, and that's cool. But I will say that, some people do that also as a way, hoping that they will discover meaning in their lives. And as far as worldly attempts to find meaning in life go, this one's really not a bad one. To be clear, it won't work. That's not where meaning comes from. But, you don't find meaning by giving other people money and stuff. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. Just, you might have noticed here by the end of the book that this is a repeating theme. All these things in the world that people try to go to for meaning may have their good points, but they're not going to give you meaning. And that's kind of the repeating theme here. But again, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. And of all the things that we've discussed so far through the book in the search for meaning, like I said, this one's probably the best one, which is not saying much because it's not going to give you meaning. But Solomon says, go ahead, be generous. Verse 1, he says, for you will find it after many days. Generosity has a way of coming back on the giver. It may not come back as money, right? But you will get something back, even if it's just satisfaction. There's always an ROI to being generous. Then he says your generosity may be the solution to some future unknown disaster. He says in verse 2, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. You can do real, actual, tangible good in the world with generosity. And that's, of course. By the way, I should say this. Don't confuse what Solomon is talking about here with tithes and offerings. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about you being generous to people. Okay, not necessarily the church. Now, the church may and should do good with the money that you give as a tithe and offering, but that's giving to the Lord. That's not what he's talking about. Let me put it this way. All of your giving doesn't have to be tax deductible. Okay, that's what we're talking about. And he talks in verse 3 about an important aspect of giving that a lot of people don't really, I think about enough. He's basically saying when you give a gift, you can only give it once. So if you have $10 to give, you can only give it away once. You can't get it back and give it away a second time, right? And that's where he says there, wherever the tree falls, there it lies. So be wise in where you're giving. That's always a good idea. But you see, there's an implicit balance there between the two things. On the one hand, you want to be generous and not hold back. And on the other hand, when you finally unclench your miserly grip on your money, you want to give it in a worthy direction. You want to give it to a worthy cause, right? Because you can only give it once. Yeah. Yeah. Verse 4. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind and how the bones are formed in the womb of the pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things. Sow your seed in the morning and do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them alike will be good. So once you've gotten past the balance between giving and making sure you're giving to the right direction, he says don't deliberate too long on it. Right? Don't dilly-dally waiting for the perfect opportunity to give. Just give. And so he says in verse 4, he who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. So get on with it. There's a
Paralysis of analysis.
yes. There's a phrase we use today, has something to do with sitting on a pot or deciding to get up and do something else. I forget how it goes, but it's something like that. The idea is don't just sit there, if you know what I mean. Get up and do something. Now, here's the other thing is, in all of your giving, you're working off of an incomplete script, right? You don't know what you don't know, and that's what he's saying in verse 5. Only God knows, right? And then he says in verse 6, sow your seed in the morning and do not be idle in the evening. He's still talking about generosity and casting your bread on the waters and all that stuff. You don't know what out of your generosity God is going to use for great things, and what things you give to will look futile. If you have two potential places to give to both. Right? That's kind of the message here. Verse 7, the light is pleasant and it is good for the eyes to see the sun. Indeed, if a man should live many years, let him rejoice in them all, and let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. Everything that is to come will be futility. The brevity of life. Thank goodness we're stopped talking about giving and generosity, right? Okay. This topic has come up before in the book, obviously, how short life is. And he says in verse 7, the light is pleasant. It's another euphemism. This time is the euphemism for life. It's another way he's encouraging us to enjoy life. But remember, this is Solomon looking back on his wasted years. And he regrets not being more generous, and now he's regretting how short it all seems. It reminds me of, you ever heard the name Malcolm Muggeridge? He was a famous journalist, British journalist in the early 20th century. He came to faith very late in his life, so I think like 60s or, later than most people who come to faith. And he wrote his autobiography, and I don't think it was the title, it might have been the subtitle. I think it was The Green Stick. And the subtitle was Chronicles of Wasted Time. That's the perspective of somebody who comes to faith late in their life. You look back on all those years and see all the time that you wasted pursuing stupid things. But I think it's something along those lines that Solomon's alluding to in this passage. He says, your life is brief, so, enjoy it. Life is too short for Mr. Pibb. Drink Dr. Pepper. Okay, that's, here's one. Don't eat anything made out of tofu that's supposed to taste like something else. If you eat tofu, let it be because you like tofu. Okay? That's my advice. Verse 9. Rejoice, young man, during your childhood. Let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood. Follow the impulses of your heart and the desire of your eyes. Yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. So remove grief and anger from your heart and put away pain from your body, because childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. So, in case you didn't know this, life sometimes can be unpleasant if you let it. And he says if you live long enough, though, enjoy the ride while you can. It helps to understand this passage, in fact, the rest of this book, if you just, like I said, imagine Solomon as this wizened old grandfather telling his grandson about life, right? He says in verse 9, rejoice, young man, during your childhood. Let your heart be pleasant during the days of your young manhood. It reminds me of that phrase, maybe you've heard it, youth is wasted on the young. I believe that's a line from It's a Wonderful Life, if you remember. It's the old guy sitting on the porch. Why don't you kiss her? Remember that scene? Youth is wasted on the young. But, a lot of people look back on their youth and think about how they could have done things differently, and I think that's to some extent, that's universal. But that doesn't mean you can't be wise when you're young, right? And the first priority should be to not take everything so seriously. And the second priority should be to take the very few specific things very seriously. And that's great. It's finding out what those few specific things are. That's the trick. But look at the rest of this verse because it's awesome. It's like when an older person meets a young man and asks him what his plans are, for earning a living, what do you want to be when you grow up, that kind of thing. What's your plan? What do you want to do? I heard it was a parenting something I heard in a sermon one time. It was based on the whole train up a child in the way he should go thing. That when you ask a young person what they want to do with their lives, one thing you should never do, and we've probably all done it, don't say whenever they tell you what they want to do, well, go to college and get a good education so you have something to fall back on. Because they've likely just bared their soul to you that this is their dream. And when you say, well, have something to fall back on, you've just crushed their dream. Oh, you're not going to achieve that. That's probably not likely that you're going to do that. Don't say that to a young person. You can see the point.
The one thing I do say is don't go into a lot of debt.
Yes, well, that's
for
always.
sitting it because.
Oh, yes, spend somebody else's money, not your own. That's my motto. No, I'm kidding. That is good advice. Yeah, I hear what, like, people, have you ever listened to Dave Ramsey's show? He gets people that call in with, like, 6-figure student loans, and they're making like $60K a year. God, that math doesn't math. So yeah, that's good advice. I like the advice that, they say to succeed, find something you love, figure out how to make money doing that. I guess that's good. That's kind of what Solomon seems to be saying here. He says in verse 9, follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. Find what you want to do it, enjoy it, be good at it. Heck, be the best at it that there ever was. That's good. That doesn't mean it's going to pay well. So just be aware of that. What if the thing that you're into is teaching? You could be the best teacher in the world, you're not going to make a lot of money at it. Sorry. That's just not the way society works. What I've discovered is that even if you have a passion about a job that doesn't pay well, you can still make a lot of money at it if you can get people to pay to watch you do it. And here's what I mean. Go on YouTube and find these successful channels. Like I'm big into the car channels and the guys who fix up cars and stuff. You don't make that much as a mechanic. But if you have a YouTube channel where you fix up a car and get people to watch it, you'll make a ton of money. So there you go. It's basically entertainment is what I'm saying. But this is why teachers, if you want to be a wealthy teacher, then figure out how to get people to pay to watch you teach. That's what you want. All right, so here's another thing. Don't surround yourself with people who want you to have something to fall back on. Surround yourself with people who have succeeded in whatever it is you want to do, and try to learn from them how to be successful at it, be the best at it. There's a book that was written 30 years ago, maybe, for programmers, and it's called Code Complete, and it's all this tips on how to be a great programmer. And one of the things that it said in the book is when you go to a job and you see all these programmers at a company and they're all working there, one thing you'll notice is that good programmers tend to congregate together, and so do bad programmers. And I think it's true in life that when you surround yourself, if you want to be successful at something, hang out with people who are already successful at it and learn from them. Now, there's one caveat to all of this. There's always a caveat, isn't it? What if your passion was to become the biggest meth dealer in the country, a la Breaking Bad? Well, here's the caveat there in verse 9. Yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. Follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes, but know that God's going to judge whatever you do. And so, the grandson says to his grandfather, I can be anything I want, Grandpa. And the grandfather says, yes, and God will judge it, so choose wisely. Right? It's not just that the thing itself will be judged, but how you achieve it will be judged. And more than that, the person you become while you're pursuing it will be judged. Those things are much more important than the thing itself. Right? I remember hearing an atheist one time talking about making fun of somebody because they prayed for their team to win the Super Bowl. And the atheist said, well, what if the fans of the other team prayed to God for their team to win the Super Bowl? What's God going to do then, huh? And, which kind of, it's a fair point, actually. Does God really care who wins the Super Bowl? No, of course he doesn't care. But you know what he does care about? He cares how they win. He cares about how the winners handle winning. He cares about how the losers handle losing. He cares about how they deal with the success or the failure. And he cares what kind of people they are and what the result drives them to become. That's what he cares about. So while we're talking about this, I'm reminded of advice I heard in a sermon years ago, and I think I've probably mentioned it, where the preacher pointed out how many times in Scripture we're compared to sheep. And, sheep are stupid. Sheep will eat themselves into lostness. They're just head down, eating the grass, going about their day. They'll look up, and there's no other flock, nothing from the flock. There's no shepherd. They're all alone. And so just by following their heart and following their appetites, they eat themselves into lostness. Now, given all that, what does a shepherd do? The shepherd tells the sheep where not to go. They'll keep their head down doing their thing, and all of a sudden the shepherd or the shepherd's dog comes and says, nope, not that way, this way. And so the point is, that's how God leads us oftentimes. When you're faced with major life decisions, this preacher said, just do whatever you want. Go wherever your heart leads you, but pay attention to when God is closing a door and honor it, because he may be saving you from eating yourself into lostness. And so that's why it says, verse 9, follow the ways of your heart and whatever your eyes see, but know that for all these things God will bring you to judgment. He will correct you when you need correcting, right? And he continues, verse 10, to say essentially the same. Essentially here, buck up and enjoy the ride. Are you the kind of person that raises your hands on a roller coaster, right? Or do you keep a death grip on the bar during the whole ride? He's saying in verse 10, so remove grief and anger from your heart, put away the pain from your body, because childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. Put your hands up and enjoy the ride. It doesn't last that long. I'm reminded when we lived up north, Josh was real young, maybe 4. We went to Sesame Place. It's an amusement park, Sesame Street themed. And it was the first time he was big enough to ride on a real roller coaster. And so I went on it with him, and we got in the front. It was empty. It was like the joy of being a homeschooler, because you can go in the middle of the week and there's nobody there. It was empty. So we sit in the first car, because why not? It's empty. And we get in here, and it goes up, and just as we crest the first hill, he ducks down, and he's like leaning into me, and he's not looking. I'm thinking, oh, this poor kid is traumatized. He's never going to get on another roller coaster ever again. And he stays that way for the whole ride. We get back to the end, the car stops. He looks up, and he's smiling from ear to ear. He goes, can we go again? I'm like, go again? You didn't see anything the first time. But yes. So he loved it. Anyway. Okay, where was I? That wasn't in my notes. That was for free. Okay. But he says in verse 10, so remove grief and anger from your heart. Right. Put away pain from your body, because childhood and prime of life are fleeting. Put your hands in the air. Before we move on, though, in this chapter, think about who it was that wrote verse 9. This is Solomon with 1,000 women to sleep with, who's building temples to them and their gods and all that stuff. How does a man go from such personal wisdom and knowledge to screw up so badly? And this is the ultimate proof against that social theory, you've heard it called the tabula rasa, the blank slate theory, that, there's no bad people, there's only bad environments. People get corrupted by their environments. Well, who created their environments? It's a reductive argument. Anyway, but Solomon had every opportunity to succeed, and even he screwed up, right? You can't make a better society through education. Solomon had that. You can't make a better society by raising the standard of living. Solomon had that. You can't make a better society by meeting every felt need you have. Solomon did all of that. And at the end, Solomon learned this: follow the impulses of your heart, the desires of your eyes, but know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. That's what he learned at the end. And so while you're doing the remembering, in verse 10, he's basically saying, pain heals, chicks dig scars, and glory lasts forever. Enjoy the ride. Put your hands up. Because childhood and the prime of life are fleeting. Yeah. You've probably heard it said, we come into the world and we go out of it the same way, bald, toothless, and drooling at both ends. No, you haven't heard that? Yeah, you come in wearing a diaper, you go out wearing a diaper. You come in eating baby food, and you go out drinking Ensure. You come in bald, you go out bald, maybe. It's fleeting, so enjoy it. But there's a difference between realizing that life comes to an end and thinking that that end is the end, and it's not. That's why Hebrews says, inasmuch as it is appointed for men to die once, after this comes judgment. And that's what Solomon is saying. Chapter 12, remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near when you will say, I have no delight in them. Before the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are darkened, the clouds return after the rain. In the day that the watchmen of the house tremble and the mighty men stoop, the grinding ones stand idle because they are few, and those who look through the window, I'm sorry, when I explain that verse, you're going to see why it's funny. And those who look through the windows grow dim, and the doors on the street are shut as the sound of the grinding mill is low, and one will arise at the sound of the bird, and all the daughters of song will sing softly. Furthermore, men are afraid of a high place and terrors on the road. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags himself along, the caperberry is ineffective, for man goes to his eternal home, while mourners go about in the street. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed, the pitcher by the well is shattered, the wheel at the cistern is crushed, and the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Now, that is one long, not really one run-on sentence, but it's two run-on sentences. And what's really interesting is and you could probably tell it's very depressing, but you might not even know why it's depressing or what it's talking about. Let me explain. It is very depressing. He's talking about, he's using euphemism after euphemism about how it is to grow old and die. And it's really good, actually, and you'll see that as we walk through it. But first, the old grandfather says to his young grandson, verse 1, remember also your Creator in the days of your youth. Psalm 100, verse 3, know that the Lord himself is God, and it is he who made us and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture, right? Why do we want to remember that? What does Solomon say to remember him? He says, before the evil days come and the years draw near when you will say, I have no delight in them. You're going to get old to the point where the days are hard, right? You're falling off of ramps and stuff, and things like that. Well, understand the grammar here. It's one day you'll say, I have no delight in them. He's talking about the current days that you're living then, not no delight in the memory, so don't misunderstand. Your days when you're young can be pleasant because you're young, right? And you don't understand how just getting through the day can be a chore when you get older. And because Solomon is wise, he explains himself, verse 2, before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, the clouds return after the rain. He's speaking euphemistically again, but about death. It's the word he used in the last chapter for life was light. And so now he's talking about how the light's going out, the light's getting dim. Most people don't just drop dead one day. There's a slow fade, and this is what he's describing here. The sun and the moon and the stars are darkened, and then come the clouds. It's hardly perceptible at first, but it tends to pick up speed, and things in your life grow dimmer and dimmer. You go from sunshine to light to sunset to nighttime, where all the moon and the stars are all the light that you have, and eventually it just goes black. This is a really uplifting passage, isn't it? You know, but he's warning the young men that you think it's going to be like this forever, and it won't. And he continues in verse 3 to describe what it will be like when this young man grows old. He says, in the day that the watchmen of the house tremble and mighty men stoop. Watchman is a figure of speech for your arms, that your arms are going to tremble, right? You know, my dad and my grandmother both had this thing, benign tremors. And so I have every expectation that one day I will have it. I don't have it yet. But in fact, you know, I know that my dad's grandfather had it. And he used to talk about when he was a kid, him and his uncles used to make fun of his grandfather because they would say, would you put the sugar on our porridge because you spread it out evenly? And you know, that's what kids do. But you know, that happens, that comes with age. And mighty men stoop, we've seen that too. But you know, once they were mighty men, but now they stoop. Verse 4, and the doors on the street are shut as the sound of the grinding mill is low. You lose your teeth, is basically what he's saying. And in fact, I think it's verse, I didn't mark it, but verse 3. The grinding ones stand idle because they are few, and those who look through the windows grow dim. So, yeah, there's less and less teeth in your head, basically. And so the sound of the grinding mill is low, right? And the eyesight goes, yeah, I have trifocals now. Yeah, the windows do grow dim. And the next one is a particular favorite of mine, and I don't mean that in a good way. He said, you're not going to be able to sleep anymore. He says, one will rise at the sound of the bird, and all the daughters of song will sing softly. The slightest thing will wake you up in the middle of the night, and then you won't be able to get back to sleep. And then maybe you've experienced this, but, sorry, I got something in my eye here. Okay. When I was a teenager, I knew I wanted nothing more than to retire so I could sleep until noon. And you know, now that I'm getting closer to retirement, I would love to be able to sleep till noon. Now I just want to sleep till 5. That would be nice, but no.
Sleep like a baby.
Awake and crying every couple hours. What's that?
We have the Chihuahua, that's fun.
Yeah, we do have the Chihuahua. Well, I don't know, the pit bull's louder with her licking in the middle of the night. That's just, oh my gosh. Anyway, wouldn't that be great? He says that like the sound of a bird one will arise. Yeah, we used to have, I haven't heard it in a while, but we did for a while have an owl that would hoot right outside our bedroom window. It was actually pretty cool. Not when you're trying to sleep, but it is pretty cool. And then, you know that about old people up at the crack of dawn. It's just not fair. You wait all your life to have the chance to sleep in, and all of a sudden you can't sleep at all. But what's more, verse 5, if you're waiting for retirement, so you can do all the traveling you've been wanting to do, he says, furthermore, men are afraid of high places and of terrors on the road. Can't even go to the store for milk anymore because you might get beat up because you're old. It depends on where you live. You should probably move someplace safer. And then he says, this is just one figure of speech after another. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags himself along, the caperberry is ineffective. Now, these are even more fun. Almond trees in the Middle East are generally white blossoms. Here they can be white or pink, but there they're generally white. And so what he's talking about there, you get snow on the roof. It's gray hair. Some of you just get bare shingles, but that's okay too. Then it says the grasshopper drags himself along. The grasshopper that used to hop now just shuffles, right? That's kind of another euphemism for growing old. That happens too. You know, all of a sudden you need a cane or a walker or one of those scooters at HEB, the electric ones. You know the ones I mean. Now, since I ride a motorcycle, I tend to pay probably more attention to weather reports than most people. And I'm convinced, absolutely convinced, Doppler radar is a myth. It's an urban myth They roll chicken bones on the floor to make these predictions because that's how accurate they are. I'm convinced of it. But some of you might have injuries that can predict the weather. And they're probably much more reliable than the weather report. But you're not a grass.
Microcell.
What's that?
Microcell.
Oh, yeah?
Blew out the door of the airport.
Oh, I didn't hear that. No. Austin Airport?
Yeah, they got dumped with the hail.
Oh, wow.
It was so deep you could shovel it.
Wow, that's crazy. All right. Well,
Weather reports.
yeah, so our bodies can tell the weather changes. But, and then finally, the last one there, if we had time, I'd like to play for you a commercial, but I don't have it queued up, for that one prescription drug where the distinguished, slightly graying man takes this pill and then he throws a football straight through the tire swing, if you know what I mean. Yes, that happens as well. And in those days, apparently there was a remedy of something called the caperberry that he refers to here. That was the original blue pill.
What verse? I don't see the caperberry.
Well, in my translation, it's what is? Okay, it's New American Standard. American Standard says it's
What
the
verse? 5.
5. Yeah, caperberry is ineffective.
Mine says, and desire no longer is stirred.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a little bit more explicit. Drake's, yes. Yeah, that happens. So this happens too. This is another sign of old age. You know what's really embarrassing is as a man, you go into the men's room and you're standing at the urinal and some young kid comes in a long time after you started and he's done way before you're done and you're still standing there. That also happens. But
This is online, so the whole world can hear it.
well, I've had surgery. I'm good now. But I'm talking about those other old guys.
And a quick peek now.
But he says, finally, now that you're doing your slow fade to death in verse 6, remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed and the pitcher by the well is shattered and the wheel at the cistern is crushed. These are all euphemisms for death. Kind of reminds me of the Monty Python Dead Parrot sketch, right? All the euphemisms for death. 6 feet under, pushing up daisies, and goes on and on. No, he's just pining for the fjords. Lovely plumage on the Norwegian blue. None of you are laughing at this at all. This is comedy gold, people. Monty Python. All right.
Makes me want to look it up, though. Watch that clip.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So if you're looking at the 4 examples he gives, some that are wealthy, some are poor, some are strong, some are weak. No matter who you are in life, the end result's the same. It says in verse 7, then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Notice, your body will return to the earth, but there's still the you that's there. And you, the real you, is going to God after this judgment. Verse 8, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find out just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads, their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, if anything in addition to them, of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. So while we're on the topic of choosing your life's course wisely, he decides to dispel any notions of trying to follow in his even more altruistic steps of being the teacher. He's saying if you're thinking about an advanced degree in philosophy and all this, don't bother. Think about how many books there are in the world. Think about how many books there have ever been in the world. And if you think you can write the book that will change the world, don't bother, is what he's saying. He said he was wise, verse 9, and a teacher and a thinker and a writer, and he did it all to the best of his ability, and if scripture is accurate, he did it better than anybody has ever done it, in verse 10. And it's not that it's not that they can't help, right? He says in verse 11, the words of wise men are like goads. That's the pokey thing that keeps the cow on the path, right? Or keeps you from going off the path or gets you back on the right path. And so, words of wisdom are good there. But he warns in verse 12, but beyond this, my son, be warned, the writing of many books is endless, and excessive devotion to books is wearying to the body. So in the end, as helpful as it may be in some small way, it's all vanity. There's only one book that can change the world, and it's already been written, right? And I will be honest, this one's a little hard for me because, he talks about enjoying life. When I imagine that, I'm thinking of a hammock and a book and a cigar and maybe a beverage of my choice. And it won't be Mr. Pibb, I can guarantee you that. But I don't think that's what he's getting at. He's talking about people who want to change the world, not the ones who just want to enjoy the ride, right? I tend to read more fiction anyway than nonfiction. He's talking about nonfiction. In C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters, he made a really good observation about this distinction between books that will change the world and books that are just fun to read. And I looked through the book, I couldn't find the exact quote, but remember the demon is instructing his junior demon in how to tempt man away from God. And he said that it's a mistake to allow the man to read books because he enjoyed it, not because he wanted to be seen as being well read. That's what you want to apply to the ego, right? And he allowed the man to take walks in the morning because he enjoyed being in nature and not because he needed the exercise, right? You want to distract him away from the simple pleasures in life because those simple pleasures may remind him of the God who gave them, right? That's the idea. The enemy can use good things in the wrong context and pervert them to our harm, is the idea. And Solomon said that writing books may be great and may occasionally be helpful to somebody, but at the end, they don't fix a broken world. Best they can do is maybe keep us on a path or entertain us for a while. Maybe encourage us to draw closer to God. I'm reminded of, if any of you watch Andrew Klavan or know who Andrew Klavan is, commentator, artiste. But in his testimony of coming to faith, he credits reading Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, which, okay, you have to be really artistic to see the gospel in Crime and Punishment. But he is, and he did, and I understand where he gets it. I've read Crime and Punishment. It kind of gives you the possibility of redemption in the end of the book, and there was a lot to be redeemed of in that book, but that's where he got that. So it's not that it can't happen. Verse 13, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, everything, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So that's his conclusion after 12 chapters of this kind of godly wisdom. That's what he gives us. That's it. Could have started with that, right? Just saved us the whole trip. But it's a very simple two-step process. Fear God, keep his commandments. But to fear God doesn't just mean to be afraid of God like he's some cosmic boogeyman. It literally means to stand in awe of or be astonished by. And of course, keeping his commandments. How do we interpret that now that we're in the age of grace? Well, fortunately, John told us how to interpret that in 1 John 3:23 and 24. He said, this is his commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he commanded us. The one who keeps his commandments abides in him, and he in him. We know that by this, that he abides in us by the Spirit whom he has given us. So live your life close to God, in Christ, paying attention and being filled with the Spirit and being led by the Spirit. That's it. But think about this whole book. Like I said earlier, he gives us all these things that can be good in life, and all these things that the world tries to tell you can find meaning in, or it will, make life bearable, they've really lowered the bar on meaning, I think. There's like almost no hope in our world of finding meaning in anything. About the most they can say is maybe relationships or, doing good for other people or something altruistic like that. Most people are just looking for something to get through life. But all these things, when you get to the end of the book, you're going to be judged one day. And so live your life accordingly. That's how you get meaning. Your meaning comes from trying to please the one who is the maker of all good things. Right? That's where meaning comes from. Yeah, it is, actually. That's it. Every man needs to do, verse 14, every deed and every hidden thing. Will be brought into judgment, basically. So, there you go. That's the book. Has anybody thought about what they want for New Testament book?
I like the Gospel.
Which is?
Yeah.
Teaching through the harmony of the Gospels. Oh, okay, sure. I could do that. No reason why I can't. All right. I don't know.
It seems well. It's shy enough.
With that, let's close in prayer. Lord, thank you for this book. Thank you for all of the challenges that are in it. Help us to see clearly, as believers, that we should see what the world is seeking after so we can nudge them in the right direction, so we can recognize when people are looking for meaning in all the wrong places, that we can nudge them, goad them toward you. Help us that when we forget and start to stray off the path, that we don't eat ourselves into lostness, that we would respect the closed doors and the boundaries that you put in our lives, that they're there for our protection, and to honor that. And Lord, we thank you for just the challenge and the deep thoughts that were in this book. Help us to not be afraid to think deep thoughts and to take hard questions to you, because you're not afraid of them and you can answer them. And Lord, just be with us now as we go, and we just pray that in whatever we study next, that you would continue to bless that. In Jesus' name, amen. Cool.